Smoke choked the midnight air as the villagers circled her, their chants rising with the crackle of fire. Her bare feet scraped the cold, rough earth. Her hands trembled against the coarse rope biting into her wrists. She could taste the fear, bitter, metallic, thick in her throat. Somewhere beyond the torches, wolves howled, as if sensing the blood that might soon be spilled. The elders' faces were masks of grim resolve, their eyes void of mercy. Branded by superstition, she had been chosen, offered as a sacrifice to silence the anger of unseen spirits. But as the knife flashed in the firelight, a shadow broke through the smoke. Was it death coming for her, or something else? Before we dive back in, tell us, where are you tuning in from? And if this story touches your heart, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, I have something even more incredible to share with you. Mara Wren was not born of the desert, but it had claimed her all the same. Once, she had worn silk dresses and perfumed her hair with lavender water, living comfortably along the cool riverbanks of the east. Now, her skin was scorched by the sun, her hands calloused from endless toil, and her heart was a hollow, haunted thing. Widowhood had stripped her of more than a husband. It had stripped her of protection, of purpose, of a place in the world. The town of Dry Creek sat like a bleached carcass in the middle of a vast, merciless wasteland. Dust storms rolled in without warning, masking the sun in a haze of choking red. The jagged hills beyond were rumored to hide more than rattlesnakes. Some spoke of bands of Apaches watching from the shadows, others of outlaws so vicious even the law refused to pursue them. Fear was a currency here, traded more often than silver. Mara lived on the outskirts, in a crumbling adobe shack given to her out of pity, or perhaps to keep her cursed misfortune away from the townsfolk. They said she was bad luck. Whispers followed her into the dry goods store, the chapel, the saloon. Some said her husband's death, mysterious, sudden, had been her doing. Others muttered about the small, jagged scar hidden beneath her hairline, a remnant from a past Mara never spoke of, not even to herself. She bore their scorn in silence. After all, what else could she do? Dry Creek was not a place for second chances. It was a place where the desperate clung to life, and the unlucky were quickly buried beneath the sands. There were few allies to speak of. Father O'Connell, the aging priest with a secret fondness for whiskey, sometimes left food at her door. Young Jesse Pike, a boy too curious for his own good, would sit by her porch and ask questions she had no heart to answer. And then there was Sheriff Ed Lowell, a man stretched thin between keeping peace and keeping secrets. His eyes, cold and calculating, often lingered too long on Mara, and not out of kindness. Beyond the town's borders, the real threat loomed, the Apache, or so the townsfolk said. In truth, the Apaches were fighting for survival against a land-grabbing government and settlers who broke treaties like twigs. Political tensions simmered hotter than the desert floor at noon. A single spark could, and would, ignite an inferno. As the sun sank behind the ragged mountains one evening, Mara felt the change in the air. It was something deeper than the cooling wind, something ancient, restless. The ravens circling above cried out in warning. In town, shutters were drawn tight. Fires were doused early. Even the bravest among them hurried home, bolting their doors. Standing outside her shack, Mara clutched a worn silver locket at her throat, her knuckles white. Inside the locket was a secret she had never dared reveal, one that, if discovered, could mean her end. She turned toward the vast, darkening desert. Something was coming, and for the first time in years, she wondered if she would survive it. The knock at her door came long after midnight, a heavy, deliberate pounding that rattled the frail wood on its hinges. Mara bolted upright from her cot, her heart thudding wildly in her chest. No one visited this far past dark unless it was bad news, or worse. Clutching a shawl around her shoulders, she crept to the window and peeked out. 3 men stood outside, their faces obscured by the shadows cast from the crescent moon. One of them held a rope coiled in his hand. Another brandished a rifle. Sheriff Lowell's voice, low and commanding, cut through the stillness. Mara Wren, open the door. We won't ask again. She froze. It wasn't a request. It was a verdict. Behind him, half the town seemed to have gathered, silent, grim, their faces carved from stone. Mara's stomach twisted. She recognized Mr. Finch from the general store, his hat clutched nervously in his hands. And Miss Lottie, the preacher's wife, her lips moving in silent prayer. Even young Jesse was there, his eyes wide with something between fear and guilt. They had come for her. Mara backed away from the door, her mind racing. Run? Where? Into the desert, barefoot and alone? She had no weapon, no horse, no allies. The door shuddered as they slammed their fists against it again. With trembling fingers, she lifted the latch. The door swung open, and the sheriff stepped inside, filling the tiny room with his presence. His hand rested casually on the butt of his revolver. "You know why we're here," he said, his voice almost gentle. Mara shook her head, her mouth too dry to speak. "The crops have failed. The cattle are dying. Bad omens." He took a slow step toward her. "The people are scared. They need someone to blame, to appease the spirits." His eyes flicked to the scar hidden beneath her hairline. Mara's hands balled into fists. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she knew better. In Dry Creek, superstition was as deadly as a loaded gun. And tonight, it was pointed straight at her. Lowell signaled to the others. 2 men lunged forward, seizing her arms. She struggled, kicking and twisting, but it was no use. The rope was wound tightly around her wrists, cutting into her skin. "You'll be taken to the high mesa at dawn," the sheriff said, almost regretful. "The sacrifice must be made, or the whole town will pay the price." The crowd parted as they dragged her outside. A bitter wind swept across the desert, lifting the hem of her dress and swirling dust around their feet. The torches flickered, throwing wild shadows against the buildings. As they hauled her through the center of town, Mara caught sight of someone, watching from the edge of the darkness. A tall figure, half cloaked in shadow, mounted on a horse the color of ash. His eyes gleamed like embers. Even from a distance, she felt the force of his gaze, sharp and piercing. An Apache, not a raider, not a savage monster as the townsfolk described, but a man. One who watched her with something that looked almost like understanding, or was it pity? Before she could look again, they shoved her into a makeshift jail cell behind the saloon, for wooden walls and a barred window too small to squeeze through. Her captors muttered prayers and curses as they locked the door. Mara sat in the gloom, her wrists throbbing, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her mind reeled. There had to be a way out. She wouldn't die for their fear. She couldn't. Across the jail's small window, the ash-colored horse moved again, and the Apache rider was gone, vanished into the night like smoke. But Mara knew, somehow, that he wasn't gone for good. He had seen her. The cell door splintered open just before dawn. Mara startled awake to the sound of wood cracking and iron hinges groaning. Before she could even rise to her feet, a shadow swept in, a figure wrapped in dark cloth and dust, moving with silent, deadly purpose. A glint of steel flashed, and the ropes binding her wrists dropped to the floor. "Come," a low voice commanded. Mara hesitated. In the dim light, she recognized him, the Apache rider from the night before. His hand was outstretched, rough and calloused. His dark eyes flickered toward the window, where the first hints of sunrise threatened to expose them. She had no choice. Not if she wanted to live. Gripping his hand, Mara stumbled after him. They slipped through alleys and broken fences, avoiding the main street where the town was beginning to stir. The cold morning air burned her lungs. Fear clawed at her ribs. If they were caught, there would be no second chance. They reached the edge of town where 2 horses waited, his ash-colored stallion and a smaller, restless mare. Without a word, he lifted her onto the mare's back, swung up onto his own horse, and they tore into the desert at a breakneck gallop. Only once the town had shrunk to a speck behind them did they slow. Mara's body ached from the ride, but she forced herself to stay alert. She didn't know this man. She didn't know where he was taking her, or why. Finally, he spoke. "I am called Kai." Mara's voice cracked from dryness. "Why help me?" Kai studied her, his expression unreadable. "Because your people will not. And because you are not who they think you are." A chill ran down Mara's spine. "What do you mean?" But he only kicked his horse into a faster pace, leaving her to wrestle with the question. They rode for hours, deeper into the wastelands where the rocks sharpened into jagged teeth and the sun beat down without mercy. Mara's mind whirled with fear and suspicion. Who was Kai? What did he want from her? As the sun dipped low, they made camp in a narrow canyon. Kai started a small, smokeless fire, roasting a hare he had caught without a sound. Mara sat against a boulder, arms crossed, trying to ignore her rumbling stomach. He tossed her a piece of meat. Eat. You will need strength. Reluctantly, she took it. She hadn't eaten since the morning before, and hunger overpowered pride. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Mara spoke, her voice cautious. Are you taking me to your tribe? For ransom? Kai gave a faint smile, but there was no humor in it. No, my tribe would not have you. Something flickered across his face, an old bitterness, quickly masked. And the townspeople? She pressed. They'll come after me. They already are. Mara's blood ran cold. She imagined Sheriff Lowell rallying the town, promising salvation if they could just bring her back and finish what they started. She imagined the hatred in their eyes, the same people who had once smiled at her husband's jokes, who had sold her thread and sugar. She was not safe anywhere. The next morning, the danger became real. They broke camp early, but by mid-morning, dust clouds rose in the distance. Riders. A posse. At least a dozen men, armed and relentless. Kai spotted them first. We cannot outrun them. Mara's heart hammered. Then what? This way. He led her off the main trail, up narrow goat paths into the broken hills. The horses struggled, hooves slipping on loose stone. Twice Mara nearly tumbled from the saddle. Her palms bled from gripping the reins too tightly. Behind them, gunshots cracked through the air. A bullet whizzed past Mara's head, so close she heard it sing. They reached a narrow gorge where the walls pressed tight together. Kai dismounted, pulling Mara down roughly. Move, he barked. Together, they scrambled into a shallow cave just as the posse thundered past, missing them by mere yards. Mara's breath came in shallow gasps. Kai's hand clamped over her mouth, steady and firm. She could feel the tension thrumming through him like a tightly strung bow. He was still, utterly still, blending into the rock like a wraith. When the rider's sounds faded, Kai let her go. Mara staggered back, glaring at him. Are you mad? They'll find us. He shook his head. They are hunting a woman alone. Not a woman with an Apache. They think you were taken, not saved. Mara stared at him, the implications sinking in. As long as she stayed with Kai, they would not just hunt her, they would hunt him, too. Over the next few days, survival became their only goal. They moved at night, sleeping by day in hidden ravines and caves. Food was scarce, water scarcer. The desert stripped away everything but need and will. Tension brewed between them. Mara didn't trust Kai, not fully. She caught him studying her sometimes, sharp, assessing, like he was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't know she was part of. And he didn't share much about himself. Only once did he speak of his past. I was once a son of the Chokinen. Now, I am no one's son. Mara heard the pain beneath those words, but didn't press. She had her own secrets. One night, when Kai went to scout ahead, Mara found something buried in his saddlebags. A crumpled letter, written in English. To the bearer of this message, deliver the widow alive. Payment upon delivery. Her blood froze. Had she been wrong about him all along? Was Kai planning to hand her over to someone worse than the townsfolk? She stuffed the letter back just as Kai returned, his face unreadable in the moonlight. Mara forced a smile, but a new fear coiled in her chest. She was no longer sure who her real enemy was. And as the canyon winds howled around them, she realized the real danger wasn't just being hunted. It was trusting the wrong savior. They reached the valley of dead trees by the third night. Brittle trunks, stripped bare by some ancient fire, clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. It was a cursed place, the kind of land travelers avoided, but Kai pushed forward, silent, grim. Mara's nerves were fraying. She couldn't shake the image of the letter she'd found, the promise of payment. Every time Kai offered her food or helped her over rough terrain, doubt gnawed at her. Was it kindness or calculation? As they made camp among the deadwood, Kai finally broke the silence. You have a choice to make. Mara stiffened, her hand unconsciously reaching for the small knife she had hidden in her boot days earlier. Kai crouched by the fire, poking the embers. His voice was low but steady. South of here is the Apache stronghold. If we reach it, you will be under their protection. No townsman would dare cross that border. And if we don't? Mara asked, suspicion threading her voice. Kai's eyes found hers across the fire. If we don't, you will die. Simple. Brutal. True. But there was something in his gaze, an unease he couldn't quite hide. Mara rose, the knife slipping easily into her hand. I saw the letter, Kai. You were paid to deliver me, weren't you? He didn't deny it. I was. The fire snapped loudly between them. Mara's throat tightened. She felt stupid, furious. How could she have trusted anyone again? But it is not what you think, Kai added, standing slowly. The letter came from someone who wants you alive. Not the sheriff. Not the town. Mara's mind reeled. Who? She demanded. Kai hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. She pressed the blade to his chest. Tell me. Kai leaned closer until the firelight carved hard lines into his face. Your husband. Mara recoiled as if burned. My husband is dead. Kai shook his head. No. He lives. The world tilted sideways. Mara's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground. It couldn't be true. She had buried him herself, stood over his grave, wept dry tears until her soul cracked. She had mourned him, cursed him, hated him for leaving her alone in a world that wanted her dead. Kai continued, his voice low. Your husband faked his death. He had debts, enemies, powerful ones. He left you behind to cover his tracks. And now he needs you. Mara pressed her palms to her ears, trying to block out the words. It made a horrible kind of sense. The whispers, the superstitions, the way the town had turned on her. She had been left to carry a blame that was never hers. Kai tossed something at her feet, a silver locket, identical to the one she wore, but newer, shinier. Inside was a note, written in a hand she knew too well. Forgive me. Find me. Only you can. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. Why would I help him? She spat. After everything? Kai's face hardened. Because he's your only way to clear your name. He holds the proof that you are innocent of what they accuse you. Mara looked away, the desert spinning around her. Her husband had betrayed her. Kai had deceived her. The townsfolk wanted her dead. No one was coming to save her. She could either run, forever hunted, or find the man who ruined her, and make him answer for it. A sudden whip crack echoed through the valley. Gunshots. Mara and Kai dove for cover as riders burst from the tree-line, rifles blazing. Dust and bullets filled the air. Someone had found them, and it wasn't the sheriff's men this time. Through the smoke, Mara caught a glimpse of a scarred face she recognized from old memories. Victor Calder, an outlaw, a man her husband had once called a business partner, and a killer. Kai grabbed her arm, yanking her behind a fallen log as a bullet shattered the ground inches from her head. They want you alive, Kai shouted, but only long enough to trade you for gold. Mara's blood ran cold. She wasn't just a sacrifice anymore. She was a bounty, and if she fell into Calder's hands, death might be a mercy. Kai threw her a desperate look. Trust me, he barked. For a breathless second, Mara hesitated. Then, she ran, straight into the darkness, straight into the unknown. And behind her, gunfire split the night as everything she thought she knew burned to ash. The desert was merciless. Mara ran until her lungs felt shredded. Kai close behind her, the crack of rifle fire still ringing in their ears. The ground tore at her bare feet, sharp rocks slicing her skin, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not when death, or something far worse, was riding at her back. They scrambled up a steep ravine, loose stones tumbling underfoot, and disappeared into a twisting labyrinth of stone towers. Mara's whole body shook from exhaustion, but adrenaline kept her upright. Kai caught her arm roughly. This way, they ducked into a narrow fissure barely wide enough for two people. The air turned cold and damp, thick with the smell of iron and dust. Above them, the outlaws' voices echoed, angry and near. Kai crouched close to her, his body shielding hers. His voice was a whisper. They'll sweep the gorge. We have to move higher. Mara nodded, too breathless to speak. As they climbed, the canyon walls closed tighter, the space shrinking until Mara could feel the stone pressing against her shoulders. The path forked ahead. Two ways out, but which one led to safety? Kai hesitated. In that frozen moment, Mara realized something terrifying. He didn't know. He wasn't invincible. He was guessing, gambling with their lives. She chose. She sprinted left, dragging Kai with her, and behind them, Victor Calder's bellow of rage tore through the gorge. Find them, dead or alive. By nightfall, they stumbled upon an abandoned mining shack, half collapsed, forgotten by time. Kai collapsed against the wall, blood staining his shirt. Mara rushed to him, her hands trembling. You're hurt. He waved her off weakly. Bullet grazed me. Nothing more. But the wound was ugly, already oozing. Infection would come fast in this heat. Mara tore strips from her skirt to bind it, anger sparking in her chest. This is my fault. You wouldn't be bleeding if not for me. Kai's hand clamped around hers. His grip was weak, but his voice was firm. You are not to blame. For the first time, Mara saw past the hardened warrior to the man beneath. His loneliness mirrored her own. A life built on survival, on never depending on anyone. Until now. Tears burned her eyes. We're not going to make it, are we? Kai's gaze locked onto hers, fierce even through the pain. Not if you give up. He was still fighting. For her. Mara wiped her eyes and forced herself back to her feet. Then neither will I. They set off again before sunrise. Every step was agony. Kai leaning heavier against her, Mara's body screaming from fatigue, but they pressed forward. Toward the stronghold. Toward a sliver of hope. By the second day, the desert broke open into a basin filled with petrified wood and shallow streams. They were close now. Close enough that Mara's heart lifted. And then shattered. At the far end of the basin, under the shadow of a rocky bluff, waited the posse. Sheriff Lowell, Victor Calder. And at the center of it all, standing tall and whole, was a man she knew like a ghost from her memories. Jonas Wren. Her husband. Alive. He looked exactly as she remembered, and yet nothing like it. His face was leaner, harsher, his eyes sharper, colder. He wore fine boots and a clean coat, untouched by the hardships she had survived. He smiled when he saw her. Darlin', Jonas drawled, as if greeting an old friend. Took you long enough. Mara's stomach twisted. You lied to me. Jonas shrugged like it was nothing. I lied to everyone. It was the only way out. You were supposed to understand. Behind him, Calder and the sheriff traded glances. Realization slammed into Mara like a blow. They were working together. The town, the outlaws, even Jonas. She had been a pawn in their game from the beginning. Left for dead to cover Jonas's escape. Hunted down now because she had become a loose end. Kai stepped in front of her, swaying but defiant. You will not take her. Jonas laughed. I don't need your permission, Apache. Step aside. You're bleeding out anyway. Mara gritted her teeth, hatred burning away her fear. You need me alive, Jonas. Or else you have nothing. Jonas's smile faltered just slightly. It was the only leverage she had. But it wouldn't last long. Lowell raised his rifle. Enough talk. Gunfire exploded. The world became chaos. Kai pulled Mara down behind a fallen tree as bullets ripped through the air. He fired back with precision, but he was too weak to hold out long. Mara grabbed a discarded pistol, her hands shaking, and fired blindly toward the attackers. Through the smoke, she saw Jonas trying to flank them, knife drawn, murder in his eyes. Not capture, not negotiation. He meant to end it. Kai rose to meet him, their weapons clashing in a brutal, primal fight. Jonas was stronger, fueled by greed and desperation. Kai was slower, wounded. Mara screamed, lunging forward. Jonas swung his knife toward Kai's heart, and Mara fired. The shot rang out like a thunderclap. Jonas staggered, clutching his side. He turned toward Mara, betrayal carved deep into his face. You were supposed to love me, he rasped. Then he crumpled to the ground. Dead. Silence fell over the battlefield. Calder and Lowell, seeing Jonas fall, hesitated just long enough for the tide to turn. Apache scouts, Kai's allies, hidden until now, rose from the rocks, arrows knocked and ready. Lowell cursed and fled. Calder wasn't so lucky. Mara sank to her knees, the pistol falling from numb fingers. Kai dropped beside her, catching her before she hit the ground. You chose, he whispered against her hair. You chose yourself. Mara sobbed into his chest, the weight of everything she had lost crashing down on her. But somewhere beneath the heartbreak, a new strength coiled inside her. She wasn't the helpless widow anymore. She was a survivor. And this time, she would decide her own fate. The desert storm rolled in with a fury. Dark clouds boiled across the sky as Mara and Kai pushed toward the final ridge, the sacred ground of the Apache, where no lawman, outlaw, or desperate ghost of the old world could follow. Behind them, Calder limped after them, bloodied but not broken. Somehow, he had slipped the noose during the ambush. Now, driven by greed and vengeance, he hunted them alone. Mara tightened her grip on the revolver. Her heart thundered, not just from fear, but from knowing this was it. No more running. No more hiding. Either she faced him, or died with her back turned. Lightning forked across the sky, bathing the world in violent silver. Kai, barely standing, touched her arm. You go? I'll hold him. No, Mara said fiercely. We finish this together. Their eyes met. No more walls, no more lies. Just two broken souls, choosing each other in a world that had tried to tear them apart. They made their stand atop the ridge. Mara's skirt whipped around her legs in the howling wind. Kai braced himself beside her, bloody but unbowed. The sacred stones of the Apache burial grounds rose behind them, ancient witnesses to the last desperate fight of their lives. Calder appeared below, a shadow among shadows, dragging his battered body up the incline. You think you've won? He spat. You're nothing. Just a whore and a dying savage. Mara stepped forward, voice shaking but sure. No, we're free. That's what you can't stand. Calder laughed, a raw, ugly sound. Freedom's a lie. You either own, or you're owned. He drew his gun. For one terrible heartbeat, the world froze. Then Calder fired. Kai shoved Mara aside, taking the bullet meant for her. Mara screamed, catching him as he fell. Blood bloomed bright against his chest. Calder cocked his gun again, advancing. Mara's fingers closed around Kai's rifle. Trembling, she lifted it to her shoulder the way Kai had taught her. Calder smirked. You don't have the guts. He was wrong. Mara fired. The shot slammed into Calder's shoulder, spinning him backward. He staggered, but didn't fall. Another shot, this one from Kai, still alive, gritting through his pain. Calder cried out, dropping his weapon as he finally collapsed in the dust. For a moment, nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Then Mara stumbled to Kai's side, tears blurring her vision. Stay with me, she begged. Kai's hand found hers, squeezing weakly. Not done yet. They bound Calder with what little rope they had, leaving him to the mercy of the storm and the approaching Apache riders. The moment they crossed into the sacred ground, Mara felt a shift. An unseen line passed. Safety, for the first time, was not a dream but a living thing, all around her. The Apache elders met them at the summit. Kai bowed, weak but proud. He spoke in a language Mara couldn't understand, but she could feel its weight in her bones. One of the elders, a woman with hair like silvered night, turned to Mara. Her dark eyes were deep wells of understanding. You are welcome here, she said softly. If you choose to stay. Mara looked at Kai, broken, bloody, but alive. At the storm still raging behind them. At the world that had hunted her, betrayed her, used her. Her past was ashes. Her future was unwritten. She chose. As the storm began to die, Mara and Kai stood at the edge of the world, side by side. Why did you save me? Mara asked, voice raw. Kai's smile was faint but real. Because you saved yourself first. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. Above them, lightning split the heavens one last time, and the rain began to fall, washing the blood and dust from the land. Washing them clean. Together, they stepped forward. Into a new beginning. Into freedom. Into the unknown. But this time, they faced it not as prey, but as survivors. The desert was quiet after the storm. Mara sat beside the fire, the orange glow soft against the bruises painting her skin. Across from her, Kai slept in fitful rest, his chest rising and falling steadily under careful bandages. They had survived. The thought felt foreign, fragile, like a butterfly perched too lightly on her palm. One wrong move, and it could vanish. The Apache had welcomed her cautiously, but without cruelty. She had earned her place among them not by blood, but by fire, by endurance, by choosing her own fate. Yet as the days stretched into weeks, Mara felt a restless stirring deep inside. A whisper that not all battles had been fought, not all debts paid. Late one night, she found herself standing at the edge of the village, the desert stretching out before her like an endless sea. A land of ghosts and graves. A land of unfinished stories. In her hand, she turned over a scrap of worn parchment, the letter she had found hidden in Jonas's coat before they left his body behind. A letter not addressed to her. But the letter wasn't meant for her. It was for someone else. Someone who had ordered Jonas's betrayal. Someone still out there. The storm wasn't over. It had just begun. Behind her, Kai's footsteps stirred the dust. You're thinking of leaving, he said. Mara didn't turn. I have to know who started this. A beat of silence. Then I'm coming with you, Kai said. She faced him, a faint smile breaking through. You don't owe me anything. Kai shook his head. I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because I want a future with you in it. For the first time, hope didn't feel like a trap. Then let's go, Mara said. At dawn, they rode out, two survivors against a broken world. The widow was gone. Only the fighter remained. And her real story was just beginning.